So today I'm talking to Tina, a fifth-year student of veterinary medicine, who joined me today to talk more about the subjects you may find in the program of veterinary medicine. I know that many of you wonder what actually you learned during the study program. So today we have a chance to dig into that more. And my first question to my guest is, what is the division of subjects during the veterinary medicine program?
Yeah, so the first few years is mostly theoretical. Like most of the animals you see will be like dead ones. And then later on, you'll divide a little bit. So I think you start in like third year to have like clinical classes, a little bit more. And then you have more and more after the years come. So like every semester you'll have like I think 8 to 10 subjects more or less, varies a little bit. And yeah, you will have that subject the entire way. And then some of them will have an exam at the end. And some of them will just have, presentation, maybe like a couple of tests or like a final test. And then, yeah, at the end you divide it. So you have like one semester mainly on farm animals, and then one on horses, and then one on small animals. And then I think like at the last semester, you will mostly do like clinical rotations, stuff like that. So a lot of practicals.
Mm-hmm. And what subjects should you expect during the first year?
Yeah, so I actually have the list here again. So what we would have was like agronomy and a lot of anatomy. Like you need to really work hard on the anatomy. You would have things like biophysics, biostatistics, cell biology, chemistry, like really like basic things. We had like environmental protection and ergonomics and histology, and you also have Latin, which is actually a good idea because then the anatomy becomes a lot easier. And like for names and stuff for a lot of things later. And we also had veterinary economics. And yeah, summer semester is also more anatomy, biochemistry, biology, foreign language, genetics, more histology, IT, professional ethics, and social science, and more veterinary history, and gym, physical education was what we had the first year anyways.
What was your favorite subject during the first year?
During the first year, well, I think I did like anatomy, although it was, it's hard because it's Latin names and there's so much to remember. And then you don't only have like in humans, it's not only like one bone on in one species. You have like several species, and every species looked different and had different foramens and holes and lines in the bones and everything. So it's different. So it's a hard subject, but I did like anatomy a lot, because that's what I'm here for, learn how the body works, which is amazing.
Yeah. I heard that some students, they were actually buying some bones, and they organized some study sessions with other students to learn all those, bones.
What is funny though is that sometimes when you buy like fake bones online, it's not a real bone. So you learn, so like in reality, it's like maybe a hole or a line here, and then the fake bone, it's not there, or like it's not anatomically correct. So it's like sometimes it can be tricky to buy like fake stuff because it's not always accurate. But yeah, we did have like study sessions as well, and you can also like go down to the anatomy hall and actually look at the bones, and sometimes the teacher would just let you in to just practice and look at things more. So that's really handy. And yeah, sometimes we'll like take pictures or make videos, and there is a lot of websites too where you can learn anatomy and things like this. So yeah.
And when do you actually start working with real animals?
Yeah, so I think mostly in like third year, because like in anatomy you will have mostly dead animals, which I remember the first time always someone would come and become really nauseous, but I think like everyone gets used to it eventually. So like it's mostly a problem in like first year that people get a little bit nauseous, or actually it can happen in later years too if it's like a lot of blood or something and people are like suddenly going to the toilet. But yeah, I feel like you get used to it, and yeah, it's usually not a big problem. But yeah, I think third year clinical diagnostics I think was the first that we started to like looking at cows and stuff like that. So yeah, you have a few years of dry theoretical material first and dead specimens before you get there
to get ready.
But it's very rewarding once you start actually like working with real animals. So then you kind of know a little bit as well. So.
And are there any subjects you may choose during your studies?
Yeah, so there is a few semesters that have like selectives, so you can choose a few different classes. So I think there was one in, was it fourth year, that you could choose between like a few different subjects. And then I think we'll have some more now in 5th year, I think, or in 6th year as well, last semester. You will have a few different subjects to pick from. And actually, one thing that a lot of people ask me is like, oh, but when you finish, can you pick to be a specialist in something like small animals and horses? Because in Norway, I think the last year or something, you can pick what species you want to work with, and then you kind of go out with a degree being more like specialized in one species. But in this university, you kind of, the only choices you really have are the electives. So when you get out, you can work with any animal, and you're not really like particularly just for this animal. You can work with anything within the veterinary industry, basically. So you do have electives though. So I would choose like maybe horses and more like immunology, and it was like neonates, and it was there's a lot of different things to choose from. So I'm excited for next time we have electives as well. So.
Yeah, and many candidates ask about internships. So what kind of internships should you expect during the study program?
Yeah, so usually people do their internships, close to home or something in the summer semester. You can always ask to like do it earlier or something if there's some specific reason. But usually people do it because you have 3 months of summer break. So I think the first year you don't have anything. After second year, you will have a couple of weeks of farm practice, where you basically just follow the farm, see how the farm works. And I think that's very handy as well, because you will have a lot of, you learn a lot about like cattle and stuff, and it's nice to know how it actually happens, because if you don't have any, if you like me don't have a lot of experience with farm animals, it's harder to learn because you don't have any background. So start with that, and then I think after nothing in third year, and after fourth year you'll have 1 month of clinicals and then 2 weeks of slaughterhouse practice. And I think it's the same after fifth year, so you have like 1 month of clinicals and then 2 more weeks of slaughterhouse, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
And as you said, you can do it like in your home country. You don't have to do it here, right?
Yeah, you can do it anywhere, basically. You just like send an email, ask somewhere, and then you just fix the papers, and that's it.
Yeah, and what are the subjects which may be shocking to be found in the curriculum?
Well, it depends on the person, I guess. I think some people may be like surprised that we're going to like slaughterhouses, and stuff like, especially if you're like vegan, maybe like going to the slaughterhouse and having this much slaughterhouse practice is not that enjoyable. But I guess like it's important to know where our food comes from. So but honestly, the subject that I was mostly surprised over, I think, was like agronomy. Because I don't want to be a farmer, so why am I learning agronomy? And then we had gym. And like, as much as I love gym, I was just like weird to have it in university classes. I was like, I feel like I'm still in high school, which is funny. And then like things like biostatistics or IT. We had IT. We were making like posters and stuff. And like at the time, I was like, why do I need this? But then I actually made a few posters later, and I was like, okay, it was actually kind of handy, because maybe you want to advertise for yourself one day or something. Yeah. So yeah.
So they are maybe not so demanding, at least some of them, but
no.
maybe.
No, they're usually not that demanding. It's just like a bit surprising.
They may be helpful. Or you also had some Polish classes, right? Like during the first year, I guess.
Because everyone keeps asking me, because I study in Poland. Oh my God, are your studies in Polish? I'm like, no, it's English division, But we learned a little bit of Polish. We had probably like, I think 4 semesters of Polish or something. I'm not saying that I speak very much Polish, because it's a very hard language, but it's nice to know a few words when you live here, because like the grocery shops, or if people are trying to talk to you, you have some background,
Yeah.
So I think it's a good idea as well. And then social science, we also learn a bit about like Polish traditions and stuff, which is just fun, honestly.
Yeah. So what was your favorite subject?
I think like material-wise, my favorite subject has been like pathophysiology. It was a really, really hard subject. A lot required, but it's actually so cool to understand the disease processes. Like you spend so many years now learning how a healthy body should look like, and then you finally learn how like the diseases look like, and then you start to connect the dots, and that I think is really exciting. And it's just like, yeah, this is why I want to become a vet. I want to know how this works. So it was really rewarding when we started like learning actually the process of things. I think, yeah.
And the most challenging or less favorite subject, what was it?
I think that a common subject for every veterinary and medicine student all over the world would be biochemistry. Okay. I don't know if it's as hard everywhere, but here they require a lot. So it's like, you have to remember the whole cycle, every enzyme. You have to draw every molecule and remember every amino acid, and it's a lot. And it's just, especially, I think, like the transition coming from like high school, remembering this easy stuff, and then you have to, you know, remember all these massive drawings and weird words that you never heard about, and you have no dots to connect it to, you know. So definitely it's a big challenge, I think, coming even from like biology and chemistry. It's a big step up, and it's if your university is strict on it, you know, it's really difficult because it's a lot to remember. So I think like a common subject for everyone would be biochemistry.
Okay. Do you have any tips how to survive those challenging subjects?
Yeah, well, honestly, it's all about the study tips and like how you do stuff. I've learned a lot during the years. I think my study techniques also changes over like the semesters because we have different material. So like different study techniques suits for like different subjects. I think one thing that saves me at least a lot of time is that me and my friends we're making our notes together, which honestly, like we're 3 people. I'm using 1/3 of the time making the notes now because all the info is already there. So if you can find a friend that you can study really well with, it makes the world different. Like it makes you so much happier to know you're not in it alone, and just like to have someone to talk with to remember it easier. And you know, everything. It's just really, really handy to have a study buddy. Like it just changed everything for me. Like the first year maybe I was studying everything alone, and it was so like difficult, and it was like I felt alone. And yeah, it's just like having a study buddy is a big thing. I think also knowing older students also helped me a lot because I was living with some of my friends from back home, and they were like further ahead in studies. And they were telling me all these things, you know, like, oh, this is how I remembered it, or oh, you know, like you really should remember this stuff because they always ask about it, or you know, like simple tips like this, like just how to get through it, or like any tips really, they can help so much. So knowing older students is definitely a good idea, and have someone to talk to and ask about stuff. Yeah, and then it comes to the study techniques, which, you know, there's 1,000 different ways to study things, but I think especially in the first years, I think the material is a bit smaller, but it's a lot of details. You have to remember all the names, you know, these kind of things. One thing I do that works really well for me, like even I think I started actually in anatomy. I was like, how am I going to remember this weird word? And then I was like, well, the beginning of the words kind of reminds me of this name, and then the end of the word kind of reminds me of this object. And then I kind of just imagine this person in this object, and then just imagine them in one place. Say it's like this bone, and that's in this building. And then you put all these people inside this building, and maybe you walk around and you do things, and then you kind of remember things. So that saved me as well in like pharmacology. Is also you have to remember every single drug and every mechanism of this drug. So especially like remember the names of the drugs is really difficult. So I would do the same here. I would make myself a story, even like write it down, make a long story. Like okay, this place for this antibiotic group and another place for another antibiotic group. Go through the whole place, and then was this cow with the human head, you know, like all these things to remember. Oh, okay, this and that, to put the words together. And honestly, after making the story, maybe making it into a drawing, the next morning I could remember the entire list of drugs, like maybe like 10 drugs, like just from this one story. So like I didn't even need to cram like one and one. Some people do that as well, to just like go through it 1,000 times until they remember it. But I like to make stories because like even now when I hear something, I remember this cow with this human head, and now I remember which group of antibiotics it is. You know, so like even for later, I find it really helpful at least.
Yeah.
There is a lot of different ways to remember stuff. So yeah, and you also have like to understand things. I like to watch videos on YouTube, you know, because they go through things really well. I like to speed up the videos. If it goes too slow, like, you can speed up, even on YouTube, you can speed up to like 1.5 or something. And you learn a lot from that as well. Yeah, what I'm doing right now looks a little bit different, because we now in the beginning we had like maybe 1 page with like all these details, but now you're in 5th or 6th year, and you know it's just like 100 pages with like packed info, and you need to know everything. So now I kind of work it differently, because now, you know, it's kind of like a wardrobe. You have like you when you already have a wardrobe ready and you have the hangers there, it's easier to put the clothes on there when you already have the hangers. If you don't, you have to put the hangers up there first, and then you have to put the clothes on, you know. So when you study good over the first 2 years, you put up the hangers. So then you kind of connect the dots a little bit more. So you kind of like, you don't have to study this hard. You kind of remember it just from like, oh, that makes sense. So you just remember it. So now it's kind of more like read a lot, and then maybe I'll have like an extra sheet of paper where I make some drawings, or like write down like the most essential stuff, like the details that I cannot remember from reading it once. So yeah, I think it changes over the years, and to find a good study technique is honestly everything. So to spend some time over like the first few years to try to develop a good study technique. I also do like 50-50-30, which is like you study for like 50 minutes, take a 10-minute break, study for 50 minutes, take a 10-minute break, 30 minutes reading, and then 30 minutes break. And then repeat like the most important stuff at the beginning and at the end, because that's when you remember the most. So I think also because sometimes, you know, you have so much to do, so you just end up studying for like 2 hours straight, and then you don't remember anything, and after that your brain is a mush for like the next 5 hours, you know. So I think it's really important to like read, but then take breaks, because if you don't take breaks, your brain is gonna melt, and then you can't study anymore, so you kind of done for the day basically if you do it too much. So remembering breaks is really important.
Yeah. It's actually important to rest, right? To have this balance between learning and resting. It's just like so important. What about your special interests concerning specific areas of veterinary medicine?
Yeah, you know, I've been spending actually the last few years trying to figure that out. Because honestly, I have so many interest areas. I grew up with horses. I feel like I always kind of want to have horses in my life. So maybe horses, but then again, you work in a clinic maybe, or work by yourself, and it's a lot of limitations because it's big animals and it's a lot of equipment, and maybe you can't do so much. And then there's a lot of driving. It depends if you don't have your own clinic. You have to go out driving and stuff like this, and it's a lot of vaccinations and teeth and like lamenesses and a lot of the same things. So I was kind of like, But then like I would work with small animals as well, but just like the regular 8 to 4 regular Western medicine is not for me really. So, but I am actually very interested in more like integrative medicine. So I would actually love to make a clinic one day where we, you know, work more on preventative medicine and, you know, maybe take titers for the vaccinations just instead of just giving it, and like to have a different view on it, because I that's how I see medicine, more like holistically and preventative. And Western medicine is great for like emergencies and stuff like this, but I personally, I think also there's a lot more space for, you know, lifestyles and to cure or like prevent these lifestyle diseases with like diet and exercise, and protecting ourselves from all these environmental toxins and stuff like that. But I also have a really big space in my heart for wildlife and exotics. I grew up with a rabbit. My best friend growing up was a rabbit. I love wildlife, and I always like, I'm pretty sure, like, you know, I'm left-handed. I'm pretty sure I was like in first grade, they were like, oh, most people write with the right, and I would sit there with my pencil in the right. You know what? I'm going to be left-handed. I'm sure that's how it happened. I don't know. So like I always do things my own way, and I feel like exotics and like wildlife and stuff like that, it's different. It's you know, not a lot of people do this, and I feel like that's more like my thing, to do something completely different than what everyone else is doing. So I would like to try to work a little bit more with exotics at clinics, because I don't have that much experience with it. I know it's tricky, and it's a bit different than small animal in general, a lot of different diseases and stuff. But then also I love wildlife, and just like being in Africa, being like an outdoorsy wildlife vet, you know, like darting from the helicopter, you know, catching giraffes, flying elephants and helicopters. This is so cool. So like I really, really love that too. But then again, it's, you know, harder to maybe get there, and like you need to take a license to work in South Africa and things like this, and it's a little bit tricky to get there, but I think I kind of want to work with that too. So I'm not sure where to start.
Wow. so many different ways.
So many cool options. You know, veterinary medicine is just amazing. You could do anything within this profession. Like, there's so many different paths to take. So, yeah.
Wow, great. So, in case you want to know more about Tina, we will share her social media details below. So you can find them there. And I think that's it for today. So that was very great to have you here, and it was very interesting to learn more about the study program and different ways how you can just develop your skills. So whenever you have more questions, please do contact us, and thank you for listening today, and hope to see you soon with our next podcast.